Hello there. Hope you can hear me fine. Yeah, we'll be starting in the next couple of minutes. Thanks a lot for joining into this webinar, which is an information session on the Columbia Business School's Global Banking Program.
People can hear you.
Okay, let's get started. To start with, thanks a lot for joining into this webinar. My name is Chaitanya. I'm co-founder and executive director at Eruditus Executive Education. We are the program partner for Columbia Business School for this program, for which you have expressed some interest, which is a global banking program, fintech, digital analytics. At our company, we work with top 7 out of the 10 business schools in terms of running comprehensive management/leadership programs for working professionals or for senior executives. It's my pleasure to have you all on this webinar, and for the next 30-35 minutes, I'll take you through some salient aspects of this particular program, and in the process, take questions as well for any clarifications that you need. So having said that, let's get started. Okay, hope you could see the slide deck. The agenda for today's webinar would be as follows, to cover various aspects of the building blocks of the GBP, Global Banking Program, as we call it. Now, first and foremost, just a refresher on Columbia University, of which the business school is a part of. This is just some trivia. For those of you who already know the Columbia, the Ivy League institution that it is, in terms of the intellectual horsepower of the thought leadership that it has shared or thrusted onto the world. So with over 100 Nobel Laureates who are affiliated with the university, and not only that, also in terms of the people who have changed the face of the world, or who have impacted the world, I think the number of outstanding individuals who have come from the university is quite phenomenal, as the slide shows, right? And as you know, that this is an Ivy League institution, and that goes without saying to the kind of people who are associated with the institute. So these are some of the prominent Nobel laureates of the university. And as you could see, the 3 gentlemen here have in fact reshaped or redefined, how capital markets work, or how financial markets across the globe work, or in fact how capitalism works. So, and that's the kind of legacy that the university carries, and that's the kind of legacy that the business school, which is part of the university, carries, and that's the kind of thought leadership that goes without saying, that we part of the program that it is, the global banking program that we are talking about. Just diving right into the program. So the context for this is as follows. So financial services as a sector, like with a lot of other sectors, is under tremendous, is weathering, or is under the influence of tremendous forces of disruption, with new age technology companies, with the digitally savvy consumer, the changing regulatory landscape, as well as the changing face of global capital markets. So this is just a couple of slides that we have taken from the latest PwC research, where it has interviewed over 1,000 institutions as well as individuals associated with the financial services sector. And what you see on the slide is in terms of the consumers of the financial services sector, how how they are interacting with the respective banks or respective financial services entities with the help of fintech companies. So payments, fund transfer, and personal finance, over 50% of the transactions that are happening across these three primary activities is happening in association with fintech companies, right? So it's no longer a financial services company or an incumbent bank has end-to-end capabilities to provide to the various needs of a customer or a consumer, but there are tremendous forces through technology that's enabling nimble startups as well as nimble fintech companies in terms of collaborating with established financial services institutions in terms of offering services. So the point of this slide is about how the face of global financial services sector is changing with the advent of technology, with the advent of digital that's been thrusted upon, and how that's changing the way customers or consumers transact or interact with the financial services institution. Right. There's another slide here which shows in terms of where is it that the financial services or financial services company or an institution is investing over the next 12 months. As you could see, data, mobile, AI, cybersecurity, these occupy the top four in terms of the prime investment areas. This is not about building up infrastructure, and this is not about building up extra manpower, but more in terms of how can you have the capability, how can you build the capabilities to be relevant to the customer that it is today across by investing in the top four that you see here. So this brings to the point, as you would be part of a company that it is related to financial services, or you would be part of a function which is in the finance or strategy domain of your respective company. It's imperative that for you to have the skills in these areas, in the areas of, say, fintech, in the areas of digital, in the areas of analytics, as well as understanding the macro forces that are influencing the sector per se, for you to evolve your as a far more effective and efficient senior executive as the whole sector is under disruption. Right? So that's the context by which Columbia Business School has come up with this program, the Global Banking Program, with an emphasis on fintech, digital, and analytics. Right. So that brings to the next slide in terms of why one should consider GBP. Is one, first and foremost, to give you the relevant skills that are needed for a senior executive in the financial services domain or in the finance function of a company, to give you the relevant skills to be able to navigate your respective corporate and to compete effectively in the current digitally disrupted world, right? And also to drive transformation at your respective company. And it's not only that; it's about immersing yourself with in the epicenters of activity that's happening out in fintech, digital, and analytics. That's in New York City and London, by interacting with the faculty as well as with eminent speakers and subject matter experts who would give you cutting-edge insights into how you can navigate effectively and to become an effective business leader. Right, and as we will showcase in the subsequent slides, there's a group of eminent Columbia faculty who will be teaching you during the 5 to 6 month journey as you go through the program, in terms of giving you these capabilities. Right, and there is project work as well. Because of the modular structure of the program, you would be able to learn as well as take time to apply at your workplace by working on a project, and that you would be getting coaching as part of the program as well. And finally, the participants graduate by with earning Columbia Business School Alumni Benefits. which we will elucidate in the subsequent slides. So these are some of the key drivers in terms of why the program is, the context for the program, and how you should, how you can leverage the particular program. I just wanted to announce that if you have any questions as we proceed through the slides, please put them onto the chat window. Happy to take them up as we proceed. So moving on, this is just a snapshot of the program. It starts end April with pre-work, etc., commencing from mid-April and till August of 2018 with 3 in-class modules that happen. The first one on the Columbia campus in New York, second one in London, and third one again back on the Columbia campus. And in between, it's stringed together with some webinars, giving thereby getting in subject matter experts to cover specific topics, as well as providing coaching on the project work during the second half of the program. And the fees, it covers the tuition, the pre-reading material. It doesn't include the travel and accommodation. That would be in addition. So to the question, there's a question on, is this an on-campus program? So it's a multi-modular program with modules on campus as well as in London, leveraging one of the phenomenal financial epicenters, and leveraging the visiting faculty as well as subject matter experts in this in the new age topics of fintech and digital from the European region, thereby getting the best of both worlds, that is New York and London. So there are a few more questions which are trickling in terms of the project work. So project work is typically undertaken wherein you bring a challenge that's relevant, that you're working on, or the business challenge that's relevant to your organization. You bring it to the program. That's part of the pre-work that happens before Module 1. And in Module 1 is where you would get some specific guidance in terms of scoping the project. And at the same time, people with similar project teams would be grouped together so that coaching support can be provided to groups that work on similar project themes as they go on through this 5 to 6 month journey. So this is just an expanded program calendar. As you could see, April is when the program kickstarts with pre-work in mid-April, program starting for a week in end April in New York. Then there are a series of webinars which cover some focused topics between the Module 1 and Module 2. Then there is a module in London wherein you would be involved with faculty and guest speakers over 5 days, then followed by a series of webinars focused predominantly on the project work and coaching, and followed by the final module on campus with project presentations and graduation towards the end of August. And diving into the curriculum, so I hope you could see the infographic. So this is broadly, you could have, if you have seen the brochure, you could recognize this slide. So the way to look at it is that look at the program, the fulcrum or the center, the epicenter of the infographic is the sector or the company that's there in the BFS side, banking, financial services, or insurance sector, right? And it's under tremendous. There are 3-4 disruptive drivers that are working at it as we speak. One on the digital front, the amount of data that's being generated. I think there's a statistic that has been generated in the last 2 years is more than what we have generated over the last century, right? And so there is every interaction, every minute interaction, be it online or offline, thanks to geotagging, if it is offline, is being captured, right? Now, the point is not about capturing, but the point is that what can we do with the data? And that's what, determines, how you create a new product or service, how you improve a product or service, or how you kill a product or service, right? So digital is at the forefront in terms of drivers that's disrupting the BFSI as a sector. Fintech in terms of the technological innovation that's happening with various activities or processes or products or services in the BFSI sector. That's what comprises of fintech. And there are various innovations that are happening as we speak daily. And that's another big driver which is driving change or disruption in the sector. Third part is analytics in terms of how people can sift through the data, organize the data, and find insights on the data, right? So the capability of analytics is becoming very crucial as more and more data is being generated. So that's another driver. And customer, in terms of how customer is interacting with a BFSI institution or a banking financial services / insurance institution, or how the customer is consuming a product or a service. So that's been undergoing tremendous transformation. So these are the four elements that have been that the curriculum is organized in terms of giving specific inputs, so that the senior executives who go through the program, they get a good handle as to what are the drivers of disruption, and identifying the drivers of disruption. What are the different ways in terms of these drivers are disrupting, and thereby as somebody who is part of the strategy, who is trying to work on the strategy of a company, or somebody who is trying to work on the operations in the company, or somebody who is working on a product or a service in the company, what you need to do, understanding these drivers. So that's the whole idea. And it's not only this. So there are tremendous changes happening in global markets per se. So as you could see, the next sphere is about how the whole facade of the markets is changing by the whole world becoming more interconnected, right? And there is a huge need to understand the global macroeconomic environment, as well as the capital markets, as well as how market making happens in terms of determining the prices of securities. So which is very pivotal for a senior executive to navigate the disruption. And it doesn't end in terms of identifying the drivers or identifying how they're disrupting, but the rubber hits the road in terms of trying to come up with formulate a strategy as well as an execution plan in terms of how you can navigate your company through this transformation. So that's the philosophy of the program curriculum. And in that sense, if you look at the topics that are being covered, you take fintech, for example. So the aspect of fintech is not only just about how are banks integrating or collaborating with fintech companies, or how are banks developing fintech capabilities, right? So as per a recent survey, there's 82% of incumbent banks of around 1,000 odd financial institutions that were surveyed. The 82% felt that they're increasing the fintech partnerships in the next 3 to 5 years. So that's a tremendous number. If you look at, there's almost zero or none, maybe 4 years back, right? And there are 20% of the 1,000 institutions. They're expecting an annual 20% actually is the annual ROI that's expected on fintech related projects for the bank. So that's a tremendous ROI to get. So as such, so these are the elements that are covered in terms of the banks and fintech integration. And of course, there is the ubiquitous term that's happening nowadays on blockchain. So the whole idea is that in terms of innovations and discoveries that are enabling cryptocurrencies and the distributed ledger technology that is blockchain. The whole idea of this topic of these sessions is about what are the implications for a financial institution in terms of how transactions are being done, or how a customer is engaging, or how a business model is, because essentially what blockchain is doing in terms of it's eliminating the middleman, it's eliminating the agents. So for an insurance company, it's a huge change with how the distribution model works with a blockchain versus what it is today. So the whole idea of a session like blockchain is try to understand its the implications to various sectors, be it for a bank or be it to an asset management company, be it to an insurance company, right? And thereby how that because of this disruption in the blockchain as a technology on these sectors, what are the ways that the strategies, or what are the ways that the execution capabilities of these institutions should change? So that's the broad idea. And again, the aspect of correspondent banking, again, that's changing the way how the sector banking as a sector is working. So there'll be an expert who has worked on correspondent banking in India who would be coming and doing a presentation or taking a session on that. Of course, for fintech or for blockchain, a fundamental aspect is on the security and privacy, right? So how should companies look at security policies? How should they look at privacy, and how should they comply to regulatory environment? So that's something which would be covered under fintech. I would just take maybe a topic or so under each of the other areas, and we'll talk about the rest as we go through. Under strategy and execution, I think the core of what's happening can be summarized in terms of leading strategic change. So it's imperative. How do you make sure that you become the change agent in your respective companies, and how would you align the various other functions or various team members in terms of rallying support as well as implementing the change? So that's critical. That's covered under the strategy and execution topic. And the other aspects I'll cover as we go through. Global markets, as I earlier spoke about, is not just to understand the drivers of disruption, but in terms of to get a macro level overview in terms of what's changing in the global economic environment. Be it with Brexit, be it with what's happening what's happening with the European or US stock markets, and trying to make sense of trying to get a handle in terms of how the markets are moving, and how the monetary fiscal policies in major economies of the world are shaping the market movement. So it's imperative for senior executives to have this skill, and that's what would be covered, as well as elements on how to access the capital markets, and to make sense of the debt and sovereign markets. And moving on to analytics, it's more about more about trying to get insights from the huge amounts of data that's generated, and how can senior executives take decisions, data-driven decisions from the reams and reams of data that's being generated, and giving you some approach towards that, as well as taking you towards some aspects of consumer finance in terms of how credit modeling can be done, taking you through some case studies, giving you some real life examples of how some businesses are effectively doing it. That's some aspects covered under analytics. Digital, again, Columbia Business School is at the forefront in terms of thought leadership on this area. As we speak, in a couple of in a few weeks, there is a Bright conference that's happening on the Columbia campus, which brings together change agents as well as thought leaders from across sectors on digital transformation or disruption that's happening. And the same faculty, David Rogers, would cover aspects on digital transformation in the financial services sectors through his latest work. And the other important element on customer, talking about the customer experience, as well as the consumer banking, as well as other areas of wealth management and family offices, which has a bearing on banking, how that is shaping, how that is being disrupted, and how executives can make a sense of that, is what that would be covered under the customers area. So as you could see, the whole the other aspect is that the curriculum, as it's put forward here, is not about going in a linear fashion, covering fintech or then strategy, then global markets, but covering interconnected issues, so that you get a holistic view in terms of how your company or the sector disruption is being happening, and how could you make sense out of it, and thereby how can you strategize to come up with an execution plan. So this is just a sample schedule of the first module. As you could look here, it starts with giving a solid understanding on the global economic environment by a phenomenal faculty from the business school, Pierre Yared, and thereby getting into the market microstructure. The idea here is in terms of how do you determine prices in a security market, right? And by giving you exposure to various models, right? And also talking about the regulatory issues that are out there, which one needs to bear in mind as you try to understand the implications of these models, right? And then giving you some aspects on consumer banking, right? So again, here this forms a pivotal pillar for the banking sector. The idea here is to give you a deep understanding. This goes throughout the duration of the program, the emphasis on consumer. So that gets covered here. And just to take a couple of other topics, so banks and fintech integration. So that's delivered by Nora Breslow. Noah is actually a CEO of OnDeck, which is a phenomenal fintech company that's based out of New York. It's an NYSE listed company, and it's what it does is that it solves the access to capital challenge of small businesses in terms of assessing the credit worthiness of a small business and making sure in terms of whether it can have which kind of banks that it can approach, and giving them avenues to raise capital. And he's a practitioner, and he would, considering the past 10 years that he has spent it on deck, with which it has deployed over 7 billion in capital to tens and thousands of businesses across 700 industries. That's a phenomenal experience that he can bring to the table in terms of giving aspects as to how banks can integrate fintech capabilities in terms of looking at new models of evaluating customers, and at the same time deploy capital in a widely untapped sector. So that's the facet that he would bring to the table. And digital transformation we have touched upon, and blockchain again, it's done by a practitioner as well as a faculty at the Columbia Business School. Aspects that we covered. As you look at the 5-day module, it's interconnected in terms of going from the global markets to the aspects of customer, to the aspects of fintech, to the aspects of digital, right? And then giving you elements of strategy in terms of leading strategic change, or in the context of this, how should you look at asset liability management. So every module per se gives you a holistic view of taking you further in terms of becoming a more effective executive as you try to navigate the disruptions that are there in the global markets, as well as in your particular sector, to become an effective business leader in your respective companies. So that's the whole philosophy in a nutshell. So I just want to pause, take some questions. Let me. So there's a question on the title of the program. It's called Global Banking Program. Is it relevant for somebody in insurance? So the title of the program, if you look at it, it's Global Banking Program with an emphasis on fintech, digital, and analytics. And as such, the program is relevant for people in financial or senior executives in financial services. So for an investment firm that is there, maybe in South America or in any other part of the world, you're as well being influenced or being disrupted by these forces, and it's imperative for you to have a good grasp on digital in terms of how that's how your new age customer is disrupting your business, or how a new age fintech company is disrupting your business, right? And at the same time have a good grasp on the global economic environment, and thereby come up with a strategy in terms of how you can take your business further. So in that sense, I don't think I would encourage you to look at the topics in terms of how they are relevant to your particular sector, rather than just going by the title, which Columbia believes it's applicable to all companies in the financial services sector. So there's a question on, is it going to be like an MBA kind of a program, or is it a deep dive? So if you look at, I think this question, I'll take it when we look at the kind of participants that we're attracting in the program. So it's not about giving you a definition of what blockchain is, or giving you a definition of what a fiscal policy or a current account deficit or a monetary policy is, right? So the issues, it's about taking real case studies. For example, when you talk of blockchain, the aspect is not just about defining blockchain, but it's taking in terms of how blockchain is disrupting taking a case study of how blockchain is disrupting the operations of an insurance company that's based in US, or coming up with use cases of how blockchain can be deployed for an for an investment management company or an asset management company. So these are the kind of elements that would be discussed, which are real life applications or real life case studies, or in terms of addressing challenges as well as identifying opportunities with these fintech or related technologies. So in that sense, it's far more application oriented, and it's far more giving you an approach to a business challenge or an opportunity, rather than dealing with fundamentals. And there's a question on what's the purpose of having a module in London. So of course, New York is the maybe the global capital, undoubtedly for the BFSI as a sector. But there are tremendous innovations, as well as there are tremendous challenges that have been happening in Europe, and London, being second only to New York, offers a great platform to engage with the experts, from UK as a geography, as well as to get some solid visiting faculty who can offer diverse perspectives to the audience. So that's the idea of doing it in London, in terms of further deepening the perspectives of the participants, as well as getting a diverse group of industry experts to address the participants. So let's take another question. Yeah. Will there be any guest speakers? I'll just talk about it. In terms of the background that's needed, we'll just cover it in the participant profiles. And so there's a interesting question of, do I need to be in the BFSI sector? Again, the question is not to be in so that's not a necessary condition, but it could be a sufficient condition if you're in the BFSI sector. But if you're in a professional services firm catering to the BFSI clients, if you're in an IT services firm catering to BFSI clients, so that would become, or if you're in any kind of consultancy which is catering to BFSI clients, it's imperative for you to have the knowledge as well as the approach to address the business challenges of your BFSI clients. So in that sense, it's not a necessary condition for you to come from BFSI, but either in a complementary way or in a consulting way, if you're either in the sector or serving clients in the sector, I think that's what makes it relevant for you to take up the program. Okay. So next we will just talk on the faculty. Suresh Sundaresan is the faculty director. He's in fact an eminent expert on capital markets. And he would be present throughout the duration of the program in terms of guiding the participants. And again, he's a Chase Foundation Professor of Financial Institutions at Columbia University. He's also he's a scholar at the Fed of New York. He was a scholar, as well as he's one of the experts who has deposed before the Enron Investigative Commission, and that just speaks of his expertise and thought leadership. And he has done tremendous work with the ECB as well as Fed in terms of global capital markets, and he brings that to the table over the duration of the program. And also has done some interesting work in terms of how we have seen I think across the world we have seen the phenomena or pattern of telecom companies becoming banks in terms of capturing the users or extending the kind of services that they can provide to the customers. But he presents a couple of interesting case studies where banks have become telecom operators, which is to say that how the sectors are being disrupted, or how when a corporate should think with the blurring of the boundaries of various sectors because of digital and because of the changing facets of the customer. So this is something he would bring to the table, a tremendous authority in financial institutions and capital markets. Moving to other faculty, again, these are Ivy League faculty that have contributed to multiple executive education programs at Columbia Business School. In particular, maybe Tano Santos, he is a professor who takes value investing as a topic, and Thanos, his research, it focuses on two areas. First is in the field of asset pricing, in terms of how you could look at empirical models as well as theoretical models that can estimate that can predict returns. The second one is in terms of applied economic theory. He brings both of these to practice when he covers the sessions on value investing. Again, value investing, as you know, it's a philosophy and an approach that's pioneered by Ben Graham, who's the guru of Warren Buffett at Columbia Business School. And it offers an approach in terms of how do you navigate volatile global markets, right? So it's about learning from practitioners like Tano. How do you actually identify undervalued assets? So that's at the core of it, right? So it goes from searching for ideas, performing research and valuation, and not only that, also performing risk management on top of it, right? So he brings to the table tremendous case studies, be it a new age company or an established company, something like Amazon and something like Walmart, and how can you use value investing as an approach in terms of understanding whether it's an undervalued or overvalued asset or a security, and then and that's the approach that can be applied across any investment decision that the participant can take in the line of their work, and that's something that happens as part of the program. Now, in terms of Other faculty, Jeff Heel, again, is a professor of social enterprise. He has done tremendous work on climate risk for corporates. What's the cost of climate change and associated quantifying the risk associated with it, and that's something very unique to the program. And he's a seasoned professor at the business school. And these are some of the visiting faculty who would be part of the program. Andrew McDonald, he has a tremendous experience in working at Standard Chartered, and he would be talking about marketing and financial services as well as customer experience in terms of giving solid examples backed by data. Noah Breslow, I spoke about him a while back, who would cover aspects on banks and fintech integration as well as credit modeling. Rajesh Dudu, again, a Columbia Business School alum. He's in fact on the blockchain advisory panel of an Indian of NASSCOM, which is an preeminent Indian business body, and he would bring in examples of how institutions like NASSCOM are pioneering as well as advocating use cases of blockchain and currently as well as in the future, and how that's going to change the face of the BFSI as a sector as a whole. Again, bringing in tremendous real life as well as our practitioner perspectives to the table. So somebody asked about the guest faculty. So these are a sample of the guest faculty who would be used apart from resident Columbia faculty as you go through the 6-month journey. So moving on to the participant details. Again, participants for the program, it's either coming from large or medium-sized financial services company. This includes consulting companies which cater to BFSI as a sector as well, or coming from fintech startups, as well as all that. Apart from this, as well as having a minimum of 10 years of professional experience, is about having a confident fluency in English. That's what's needed. And these are some of the people who have applied to the program, just to give you a sense. Again, the idea is, both for professional services firms, who are serving BFSI clients, or from banks, or from insurance agencies, right? So it's across the board who are considering the program. So again, in terms of work experience as well, there's a good spread of it, which brings in phenomenal diversity, as you could see from the geographies as well. So the program is expected to have at least 15 to 18 geographies represented, which presents tremendous diversity, as well as giving you a bird's eye view as to how disruptions or innovations are happening in various geographies within the regulatory constraints of that geography. So that's a tremendous advantage as well as benefit by having such a diverse group of audience. And Alumni Benefits, one of the benefits of the program is you graduate with Columbia Business School Alumni Benefits. And what it means is in terms of being part of the direct alumni directory, as well as alumni career services resources, right? As well as a lot of networking opportunities through the events that Columbia Business School runs that you could avail, right? As well as lifelong learning in terms of webinars, as well as any future programs that you would want to attend. These are just to encapsulate some elements in terms of where the Alumni Network would play a role, be it for your taking guidance for your career transitions, be if you're looking for any business development opportunities, right, as well as for lifelong learning with reaching out to like-minded people or experts with a phenomenal network that Columbia Business School has. These are some of the notable alumni of the business school. It's about the who's of who of financial services firms, as well as eminent MNCs that are out there. Just to give you a gravitas of, we're talking about over 40,000 alums that are present, and that's a phenomenal network for you to, leverage and be part of. And we'll come to the last stage of the presentation. The admission process is quite straightforward in terms of there's an online application form with an application fee. You would just need to append your resume or a LinkedIn profile to that and submit it. I think March 19th is the final round of applications, and once accepted, I think the slide, one needs to pay 10% to reserve the seat. Quite straightforward. And so that's broadly what we have for as part of our presentation, and happy to take any questions. Yeah, there's a question on whether the experts would be doing the webinars, or would they be part of the classroom modules as well. Again, it's interspersed. As you saw, let me just go back to one of the earlier slide. Yeah, as you saw here, the idea is to get together some subject matter experts or affiliate faculty of Columbia Business School, like Noah, into the classroom module. And in the evenings, the idea is to have at least schedule some visits to the center of excellence that's there at Columbia Business School, or to invite speakers so that the participants can leverage the New York ecosystem. So that's broadly the idea. And what is the certificate that the participants would get is a certificate of completion for the global banking program, fintech, analytics, and digital, as well as they would get a certificate in business excellence. So the two certificates that the participants would get. CIBE, which will enable them to qualify to receive Columbia Business School Alumni Benefits, as well as a certificate of completion of GBP. So let me just scroll up if there are any further questions. Yes, we will be sharing the presentation post the webinar. Happy to do that. So there's a question on project work. Yes, we've addressed it earlier. So the whole idea is that participants come with a business challenge in a specific template that's there as part of your pre-work before Module 1. And in Module 1, your challenge will be scoped as well as grouped based upon similar business challenge that other participants might have. And over the duration of the program, you would be getting coaching towards that.
One question from Girish Chandra, senior banker currently working.
Yeah. So there's an interesting question on how this senior banker and how this program can help in career progression. So I think the big thing for I would just say is at the crux of the program curriculum or the program philosophy. As one moves through the career in the BFSI sector, the skills, what got you here as a senior banker is not what would get you in the next short to medium term, because of the tremendous changes that are happening in the sector. And the whole idea of the program is that how can the program equip senior executives like you with the skills in terms of understanding these disruptive drivers, understanding the global markets and the macroeconomic environment better, and come up with this strategy and execution capabilities so that you can navigate or you can upskill yourself to be able to be more effective at your role. So in that sense, the content of the program, which is extremely relevant for today's BFSI environment for a senior executive, Right. Second, the inputs that you get from Columbia Business School's thought leadership and the Ivy League quality of the program. And the third, more importantly, is the brand that you would be associated with, which is Columbia Business School, which I think these three elements would pave the way for you to be more effective in your role or in your future role, which by definition helps you or accelerates your career progression. We'll just take maybe a couple of questions before we wind this up. Yeah, in terms of the webinars, so these would there's a question on the duration of the webinar as well as the what time it will be, what time of the day. Again, the webinar timing will be decided based upon the class composition, which geographies are represented, so as to make sure it's convenient for as many geographies as possible, as well as the webinars are recorded so that in case because of your travel or for any other reason you missed it, you can access it. Right, so typically they are 90 minutes to 2 hours in duration, right, and that would happen typically on a Wednesday or a Friday. Again, that's this exact schedule will be based upon the class composition. So there's a question on will aspects of cryptocurrency be covered? Again, that will be there's a specific session on cryptocurrencies and their implications, as well as the regulatory environment towards that, and it will also be covered in blockchain as one of the use cases of cryptocurrencies. And the idea is also the participants will learn about some of the latest innovative tools that are out there, and covering currencies such as Ethereum, Golem, Ripple, Bitcoin, and also talk about what about the applications to various sectors. So when you talk about cryptocurrencies, there's always the aspect of initial coin offerings, right? So what are the different types of digital tokens, and what are their functions, and how can you assess the potential of these for a corporate strategy or for investment purposes. So the elements is more about from a BFSI institution perspective, or from an executive who's representing a corporate in the sector, what are the implications with the cryptocurrencies that are out there, and how can you assess the potential towards your corporate strategy and investment purposes. So that's the angle that it's taken, rather than giving you a download of the definition of cryptocurrencies or the the 10s and 20s of cryptocurrencies that are out there. Okay, so on this note, maybe in the interest of time, we will just wrap up the webinar. Again, I just want to tell it in summary. So this is a program that's designed by Columbia, keeping in mind the huge waves of disruptions that are happening in the banking and financial services sector, and how can executives like you can navigate this very effectively and become a much more effective business leader by getting Ivy League inputs through the thought leaders at Columbia Business School, as well as practitioners from across the world in giving cutting-edge inputs to you. In case you're interested in the program, the final application deadline is March 19th. We would encourage you to apply. Our colleagues at Eruditus are happy to assist you for any kind of support that you would need. And in case post the webinar, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, and happy to take them or to give further information. Okay. On that note, we will just wrap up the webinar, and thanks a lot for spending the time, and have a very good day.